It has been nearly 2 years to the day since Russia invaded Ukraine. The war that ensued has reshaped the global order and redefined alliances. For months, it has been described as going nowhere, a continued state of conflict with neither side doing enough to dramatically shift the balance. But just this week, Moscow did make a significant advance. It captured the city of Avdiivka, and that represents Russian President Vladimir Putin's biggest win since taking the city of Bakhmut in May of last year. Kyiv is vowing to fight on, of course. I was just at the Munich Security Conference last week and spoke with Ukrainian and European officials, and there's a real determination to keep going. Denmark, for example, said it would send its entire artillery to Ukraine. The bigger question is Washington's role, and uncertainty that Putin is watching very closely. The 24th of February will mark 2 years since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. What will year 3 bring? FP published a series of takes from a range of thinkers, including David Petraeus, Angela Stent, and Roger Mohan, and I urge you to read their work. It's linked on this site. One of the contributors to our roundup says it is a mistake to call the conflict a stalemate. Instead, the means to deliver a Ukrainian victory remain firmly in Western hands. Well, that contributor is Anders Fogh Rasmussen. He's the former Secretary General of NATO and a former Danish Prime Minister. Anders Fogh Rasmussen, welcome back to FP Live.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
So we were both just in Munich, and I imagine you had a range of conversations with Ukrainian and other officials, and the situation in Ukraine right now was described to me as being at its worst point since the invasion 2 years ago. And the capture of Avdiivka was obviously a blow. What is your read? Is the war at its worst point for Ukraine right now?
Yes, Ukraine is in a very critical situation. It's not a stalemate. I would call it a weaponized stalemate, with the front line moving forth and back. But right now the Russians are on the offensive. So it's a very critical situation, and Russia has still occupied around 20% of the Ukrainian territory.
I want to push you a little bit on why you think it's wrong to call this conflict a stalemate. What's the problem with that terminology?
The problem is that it's, I would call it a defeatist approach, too defensive. If the Western countries deliver all the weapons the Ukrainians need, then they could advance. Last year, we were disappointed to see slow progress on the expected Ukrainian counteroffensive. But we are to blame ourselves for that. We have been too hesitant to deliver the weapons the Ukrainians need. And in the meantime, Putin exploited our hesitation to fortify his defenses in eastern Ukraine, which made the counteroffensive much more difficult and also, unfortunately, much more bloody.